Hello, global gardeners. Happy Monday. It's wonderful to have you all here today. It's wonderful for me to be here today. I love my Monday mornings when we get together for this. Mala has just walked into the room and is laying down now. So she, me, puppy Lika, we are just having a wonderful morning here in Colorado. It's a little chilly outside. There's some snow forecast for tomorrow, but it's a wonderful day to get together and talk about gardening with a focus on seeds today, not just our seeds in general, as Mala's trying to find a comfortable spot, but what do we do to choose the seeds most effectively? So I'll be looking for some of your tips. I'll be throwing out my tips. And of course, this great community will be helping out each other. Shout out to Donna in Scotland and Rick in Australia and everybody else in between. Because have you ever looked at a globe, how far north Scotland is and how far south Australia is? It's just incredible that we can have such a wonderful community. And a special shout out to Sean Capel this morning. I've talked about my garden club that I go to on a monthly basis and have for years. Well, we just had our club elections, and I encourage all of you to find a local garden club and get involved. And Sean epitomizes what I talk about. A relatively new gardener, Sean started getting involved with our garden club this year after attending our plant sale in the summer, and he agreed to be the president for the Falcon Garden Club moving forward into next year. That is just fantastic. Not only to getting involved, but also taking an active role to keep the club going. You don't have to be an old, grizzled gardener to be a participant in your garden club. You can be a young guy like Sean and still take a very active role and learn a lot in the process. So I'm so excited for the future of our garden club, but also for Sean, because he's a great guy and we're all going to help him out as he does a fantastic job in the future. So look for a garden club near you and just hang out for 6 months and then see if you want to get involved, because there's some great opportunities that all of the clubs can offer you, no doubt of that. Gardens Happen says, I had a dream the other night that I was trying to find a place to put one of my orange trees. So, when you are a true gardener, when you start dreaming about gardening. I'll do that. It tends to happen more during the summer months when I'm most active, but sure. I'm guessing a lot of you have similar experiences. You wake up thinking about where you're going to put plants, where you're going to get plants, what you're going to do with your plants, your harvests, how are you going to use the harvest. That's all part of this wonderful world that we are all part of. And I think that's so fantastic. I also want to give a special shout out to Nachi G. She gave a super chat contribution at the end of last week's show, and I missed it. I didn't get an opportunity to thank her for that. So I want to thank you, Nachi G. I'm just apologizing that it's a week late, and I do appreciate all the support that you give the channel, all the support that everybody gives the channel. And hello to Tony, our wonderful friend from Wales, who is just signing in. I see as it's scrolling up. So it's a fantastic opportunity, and I do encourage that you all tell us where you are from, because it really is neat to see how we are sharing this from all over the world. And Shandy's Garden mentioned earlier that she just loves listening to or seeing where everybody's from, and so do I. So if you're checking in for the first time, if you're new to the channel, even if you've been here for years, the years we've been doing it, tell us where you're from, because it really does help us with a little bit of perspective. And it also helps when we start talking about a subject like seeds, when we understand that there are people from all over the world that are in the conversation list right now. And so if someone gives a suggestion for one of their favorite varieties or how they select their seeds, it may differ from the way that you think about doing it. And you may not even recognize what they're talking about. Well, that's because it may be coming from a completely different perspective because it's a different location. And I do that. I'll mention some of the stores, I'll mention some of the sources of my seeds. And I recognize that not everybody has access to those sources. So just be aware that the idea stays consistent with all of us, but some of the specifics might be a little bit different. And so as we look at our seed selection, what are some of the things that I think you should consider as you start deciding what you're going to do? And many of us are starting that process of choosing our seeds for next year. It's autumn here in the Northern Hemisphere. We're getting very close to winter, and we're not outside doing any planting or growing, but we can be inside planning the planting and growing for next year. The first thing that I highly recommend when you start selecting your seeds is to see what you already have. I've got boxes and boxes of seeds. I've shown this in my videos before. I have that terrible addiction of needing to buy seeds every year, of seeing something new and special and exciting, and I've got to buy that seed packet without fully recognizing that I already have a whole bunch of seeds. I've already got seed packets. I've already got boxes. This next year, that's going to be a big focus of mine, is really trying to reduce what I purchase because I already have. I have a good stockpile of seeds. So take a personal inventory for yourself. What do you already have? And if you're planning on growing tomatoes next year, well, rather than being enticed by that beautiful seed catalog with those beautiful pictures, take a look at what seeds you already have. And you may recognize that there are packets there that you haven't planted yet because maybe your garden hasn't developed. It's not so big that you have the space. And that's a big problem. That's how I got started with this addiction is I always wanted to try something new. I always wanted to buy another seed packet. And then it turns out that I would only grow maybe 2 beds of tomatoes in a year, but I'd have too many seed packets to grow everything. And so I'd plant some of my favorites and the others would just sit in the box. And sometimes they would be unopened for years before I rediscovered them and then added them to the mix for the following season. You can not only waste a lot of money, but waste a lot of time and effort by getting seeds that never go into your garden. So start with what you already have. That's so easy, fits within the budget so well. And often the seeds we already have tend to be our favorite plants. I've got so many black krim tomato seeds because I love black krim. And I know I love black krim, but I get in that habit. I think I've got black krim seeds from Baker Creek. I've got black krim seeds from Botanical Interest. I've got black krim seeds from Territorial Seeds. And they're all still good. I didn't need to buy the others. I just got into that habit of thinking every year I needed to buy black krim because it's one of my favorite tomatoes. You got to stop at some point. You got to quit feeding the addiction and use what you already have. And tied in with that, recognizing what your favorites are, that's another big part of seed selection. Choose what you like, choose what you're going to grow, choose some of the things that you already have experience with, particularly if you are a new gardener. I highly recommend experimenting, trying something new. But I also highly recommend staying with some of the things that you know are going to do well in the garden. So many gardeners, and let me rephrase that. So many people who attempt to become gardeners give up after 2 or 3 years because they're just not having enough success in their garden. They're always trying something new. And until you learn otherwise, some of those new things may not work in your garden. So find the successes. The very first year that we all garden, there's usually at least one plant that does okay. Maybe it does good. Maybe it does great. You should stick with that. That's the kind of plant that should stay in your garden. And if you've run out of seeds, Now it's time to get the seeds from that particular favorite plant that you want to grow. If you're growing for the purpose of food, to feed yourself and your family, that can really make a big impact on how you choose your seeds. What does your family eat? What are the best crops for you to grow to get those best harvests, to preserve, to eat fresh, to give away, whatever it is you're doing with your harvests? What does best in your garden? And that's what you should consider growing. Zucchini is one that I always recommend to new gardeners. For almost all of us can grow zucchini and have tremendous success with it. And so think about that. The zucchinis, that's what we call them here in the States, of course. The squashes of all types that may be favorites of yours and that you find grow best in your region, grow those and keep growing those year after year so that you will always have the success into the future. And as long as you take that approach of always trying to grow something that's going to work, then you're going to become a gardener and continue on your journey. Throw in some of those new things, throw in some of those experimental options, but have the foundation. Keep that foundation that really will keep you going. Rick is saying the weather's very warm in Australia right now, spring moving into summer, of course. Onions went to seed a lot, hoping garlic will be better. And so this kind of plays in with a little bit about what I was talking a couple weeks ago about saving seeds. And so you can plan to select your seeds with the purpose of growing a plant to get to the point that you can save those seeds for future gardens. Sometimes it just sneaks up on you, and especially when the weather gets very warm. There are many plants. Onions are one of them. Carrots are another one. Beets, spinach. There are a lot of the plants that we grow as an annual crop and we harvest within the same year, but they're biennial plants. And you need to plan for 2 seasons of growing to get seeds. But if it's really hot, if it's really dry and windy, if those plants are stressed in that first year of growing, they'll often and set flower stalks and set seeds. So while we might want our onions to be growing bigger and have those huge bulbs that we can collect, sometimes they might actually bolt and go to seed. Save the seed. I hope you're thinking about doing that, Rick. Go ahead and save the seeds from those plants and plant them again this year. And you might be able to get a second crop of onions moving into your fall and early winter. So this is the silver lining aspect of gardening. When things don't necessarily happen the way that you're hoping they're going to happen, you might be able to take advantage of it. As to the garlic, mulch it very well. When you mulch your plants going into the summer in particular, the mulch, a thick mulch, tends to moderate the soil temperature. And so our plants are affected by not only the air temperature, but they're very strongly influenced by soil temperature. And so if you can keep your soil cooler and then throw some shade cloth over your plants, you might be able to keep some of those biennials from going to seed. You might be able to keep some of the plants that are going to be greatly affected by those hot conditions a little bit cooler so that they can grow more normally at a typical pace. And so with the continuing with that thought about selecting your seeds for the purpose of saving seeds, I like, particularly with the carrots, and I've talked about this before, if you're going to grow carrots and you want to start saving your own carrot seeds, well, then by all means, select a variety that you're going to want to grow again, maybe one that you have grown in the past. But have a section of your garden specifically set aside for saving seeds. And so as we start our planning with our various garden beds, and the way I do it is I try to stay pretty organized. So I'll have a bed for my squash plants, and there might be 2 or 3 different types of squash in it. And I'll have one bed for melons, and I might have 2 or 3 different types of melons. And I do the same thing with cucumbers and the same thing with peppers. My pepper bed this last year, I think I had 7 or 8 different varieties. No, it was more than that. I think it was 10 different varieties of peppers, all in the same bed. But the bed was all peppers. I had another bed that was cabbage and spinach and beets and carrots and lettuce and radishes, all growing intermingled within the same bed. So lots of different options to take. But then having a separate bed with the intent of growing for seed, I think can be a great option. I showed that in the video I did recently about the 15 bean soup seeds that I planted. That bed was all beans, but it was 15 different types of beans. The purpose of that bed was to grow those beans to the point that I would harvest them as seeds. I let the pods dry on the plant and then harvested the dry beans. That was intentional, and that was a part of my planning. I selected those seeds and I selected that bed with the intent that all of those plants would go to seed so that I could have that seed again for next year. And now I've got hundreds and hundreds of bean seeds to carry me forward into the next couple of years. Beans of more than a dozen different varieties. So you can see how the decision of how you're going to garden can play into your decision on what seeds you're going to select and what you're going to grow. I like planning. I like having a specific idea of what I'm going to grow, but it's also okay to have flexibility. So at our garden club, every month we have a seed swap, and people that are members of the club that have extra seeds bring them in and we put them on the table, and anyone that wants to grab those seeds can grab them and move forward. Well, I have done that. And the seed packets that I grabbed this most recent meeting were bee plant. Now it's not bee balm, that's a different plant, but here in Colorado, a plant that's known as bee plant actually does quite well. And now I got a bunch of seeds. Wouldn't have normally been on my radar. It might not have been a plant that I ever really considered growing. But when we did our garden tour within the garden club this summer, I saw one of the gardeners who was growing this bee plant, beautiful plant. And then I see the seeds at a club meeting. Well, I selected those seeds. It wasn't part of a master plan. It just happened. And now I'll figure out a good spot for those seeds and they'll be added to my garden for next year. So however you like to plan, whether it's haphazard or whether it's very specific, you can still build in that method into your seed selection and your seed choice. And so where do we get all these seeds? Well, they're not in the stores yet. It's still too early. Seed catalogs, great way to start learning about new plants, start seeing what's available, and then start choosing your seeds. I've got a few different videos on seed catalogs. I think seed catalogs are great. It's a great way to learn gardening. I've got a video about how great seed catalogs are to learn more about gardening. I've got videos on some of my favorite seed catalogs. Start looking at different companies and order their catalogs. I will admit that almost all of the seeds that I will purchase through a catalog are from companies that send out free catalogs. Now, there's a lot of great companies out there, a lot of good options, but it can be expensive for the catalogs. And so not every seed producer is going to be able to send you a free catalog, but there might be a free PDF file, a free catalog that you can download and see everything they've got. I would encourage that you do that as well. And get exposed. Get exposed to what's out there. There's lots of different options when we talk about the catalog. So you can do the Baker Creek catalog, so famous for the pictures inside. I've called it garden porn before because the pictures are just filled throughout, and you can just keep thumbing through and just become so excited by looking at all those wonderful pictures of the plants and the fruits and the flowers and everything that Baker Creek offers. Fantastic. It's really enticing. You want to buy as much as you can from Baker Creek because the pictures are so wonderful. But the catalog itself is not so good when it comes to educating yourself about those plants. It's mostly just pictures. So go to someplace like Johnny's. Johnny's will send you a free catalog. It's a big, thick catalog, and it's packed with information about how to grow those plants. It's not just pretty pictures. It's a lot of basic information, I think, that may be important in your seed selection, because you need to choose the seeds that are suitable for your climate, suitable for your region and your soil. And you need to find a catalog that will give you that kind of information if you're not experienced enough to be able to determine the general foundation that a plant will need. So Baker Creek, for instance, all kinds of wonderful beans to choose from, but you have to know what a bean seed needs to grow before you order it from Baker Creek, because they're not going to tell you. But Territorial Seed, the Johnny's, the Botanical Interest, there's so many wonderful catalogs out there that will give you that information right up front so that you don't make a bad choice, so that your selection will actually grow in your garden. And I've made that mistake so many times, particularly as a new gardener, where I saw something and bought it, and then it didn't do well in my garden. And I found out too late. It's because it never would have done well in my garden. It just does it. Whatever the plant happens to be, it doesn't match with my particular climate. Is it a waste of money? Well, not really, because I think even the failures within gardening can be wonderful lessons as we move forward. So it's a cheap lesson, but it's a lesson nonetheless. And a plant or an attempt to grow a plant, and you learn not to do it again. You learn not to buy those same seeds again unless you want to experiment and try to do something a little bit differently. Shandy's Garden is saying, I have quite a collection of catalogs, and they typically keep the same stock numbers or inventory numbers year to year. Absolutely great references for learning. Purchased the large Baker Creek once. Yeah, Baker Creek actually has a super catalog that you have to buy. That they'll send you their main catalog for free. But I did a tour of Baker Creek a few years ago, made a video about it. They have usually around 1,000 seeds to choose from each year. And they just don't have space in their main free catalog to list everything. So they have this other catalog that lists everything. And it does have some stories, some recipes, and some additional information. So that's also a great option, especially when you look at catalogs as an information source, is to maybe consider purchasing some of those other catalogs that will give you that extra information as you start developing your library. and they're right. That the numbers will stay the same. The catalogs will vary from year to year. And I've done that occasionally too, where in one year I'll find something that I like. I'll remember that I like it. Maybe I've written it down on my notes for that particular year, but I didn't get the seed. The next year, with a different variety of calendar from the same, or not calendar, catalog from the same company, and you don't see that again. I've gone back to previous years and seen the stock number, and then go online and enter that stock number. And almost always they still have it in stock. It's just not listed in that year's catalog. So I have a stack just behind me here of previous year's catalogs that I keep for that reason. And because occasionally I'll remember an article, or I'll remember some information from a catalog that I want to take a look at as I'm planning the garden for the future. Robin Garden says, Pine Tree catalog arrived. I like the Pine Tree seed company. I've ordered from them a number of times. I'm already hooked on things I didn't know I wanted because I have the catalog in hand. Absolutely. Pine Tree has smaller packet quantities, good price, perfect for me. Another great point when we start looking at our seed selection. You've got some companies, and Johnny's is one of those that you can get big quantities of seeds. And some, particularly if you start getting into the companies, there's a few of them here in Colorado that really market to farmers. And they're local companies. I like supporting local companies, but sometimes the quantity of seeds that they sell is just more than I'm willing to buy because it's more than I could use within my garden. And so finding some of those companies that have the smaller packets, which are often at a less expensive price, that's another great way to look at your seed selection, is matching the size of your garden with the number of seeds you're going to plant. And then there's no reason to get a packet of pea seeds with 200 to 250 seeds if you're not planning on growing that many plants. Instead, buy the pea packet that has 35 or 50 seeds, and that may be more suitable for what you're growing or whatever the case happens to be. Totally Tomatoes is a company that sells tomato seeds almost exclusively. And you can see that depending on the variety of the tomato that you're going to grow, the seed packets aren't that big. It might only be a few tomato seeds compared to some of the big corporations that are sending out dozens and dozens of tomato seeds. So yeah, match the size of your garden and how many plants you want to grow as you start looking at the choice of seeds moving into the future as well. Karen, hello to you. Glad to see you here today. Karen's another wonderful member of our garden club. Shout out to you. We missed you this last week, Karen. So hope to see you at some of our get-togethers next month. She says, great local Colorado gardening channel is regenerative gardening with Blossom and Branch Farm. I don't know that. I'll have to check that out. Thank you for sharing that information. So I'll make note of that and come back to make sure and check that out. So regenerative gardening with Blossom and Branch Farm. Fantastic. And so yet another wonderful idea, a great tip moving forward is finding those local farms, finding those local sources for seeds, and add that to your list as you're procuring next year's seeds. If the seeds come from your region, chances are very high that those plants are going to do well in your region. And so my part of Colorado used to be a huge potato growing area, but the potatoes really aren't available anymore. And the big farms have gone away. But that tells me that potatoes generally will do well in my region because I don't live in a farming region. There's not a lot of the commercial agriculture happening near me. But to know that potatoes in the past did really well in this region, I can add that to my selection as I'm putting together my garden plan. I know they do well, might as well give them a try. And I've got videos on how well the potatoes have done for me because they have done well for me. And of course, shout out to Tony O'Neill at Simplified Gardening because his part of Wales matches that same concept, which is why he's got so many wonderful videos about growing potatoes. So matching the plants with the area that you have makes a great difference in the selection. A big shout out to Eli and Kate. Check out their latest video. I really liked it. So the area of Scotland that they're from is already getting a little bit icy. Some of us, of course, have had ice and snow for a number of weeks now, but it's a great video about dahlias. Now, I don't grow dahlias because it's just too much effort for me. I'm kind of a lazy gardener. It's a lot of work to grow dahlias. Eli and Kate are fantastic at growing dahlias. And their latest video is all about the hardest part. And this is why I don't grow dahlias, because you have to dig them up in the winter and you have to prepare them and you have to choose the right time. All that information is in their latest video. So if you are growing dahlias and want to know more about it, but aren't sure, check out the video. Or now that we've kind of thrown the idea out there, if that's a flower that you want to grow but didn't think you could, check out their latest video. And of course, the other videos about their dahlias. And so when we are selecting what we're going to grow, I think that plays a big role in it as well. What are our favorite YouTubers growing and how are they doing it? And if their climate matches our climate, then that may be something that you can consider in growing or in your garden, growing it because you've seen others have success with similar conditions. And I talk about this all the time. It's got to match. So all those channels from South Carolina and Texas and San Diego are wonderful for information if you live in a similar area. It doesn't always match for those of us that live in Scotland or Colorado because our conditions are so different. So making sure that you have the match if you're taking advice from someone else is critical in selecting the plants that are going to grow in your garden. Just because someone else is doing it doesn't necessarily mean that it is best for you, but it is something to definitely consider. Rick is saying, I got 50 plus kilos of free potatoes. Wow. Mini chitting while tried to plant most, but chip mini. Garner Scott, as I get their scraps for compost. So that's fantastic. And this ties in with the idea of getting the free seeds at my garden club. Yeah, get free stuff. If you can, 50 kilos, that's incredible. But if you can pick up a few cuttings or a few seed potatoes or a few free seeds from somebody that's near you, do it. That's a great way to start your garden planning because you already have something that you're going to be able to put in the ground for free. I think that's a fantastic way to approach it. Brian's Garden is saying Botanical Interest catalog is worth it just for the awesome artwork. Completely agree. Completely agree. They've got the art, the flowers, the plants that they have in their catalog, and also on their seed packets. Is just fantastic. Botanical Interest is one of my favorite seed catalogs. In fact, if you watch my video about my favorite catalogs, you'll see that Botanical Interest is right at the top because they're just so fantastic. And Eli and Kate says, we all love free seeds. Yeah, and it works both ways. And so if you have extra seeds, give them away because we all love free seeds. Well, they've got to come from somebody. So maybe you could be that somebody. Maybe you can be the one that's giving away some of the seeds that you have to make another gardener happy. And the perusing of the seed packets at my garden club meeting, it just, so many people are just happy, just looking to see what's available. They might not grab anything, but I see a lot of people smiling and conversations develop while they're looking through the seed packets because, yeah, it's just, there's something about getting free seeds that I think is fantastic. Hey, Bowtie Life had said that he wasn't going to be here today, and he is. So waiting at the doctor at the moment. So glad you're here with us. Fantastic. Owen is wondering, will jujubes be true to seed? I'm not sure about that. I haven't grown them. Somebody had talked about jujubes a while back, and I had looked into it briefly to see if I could get them to grow here, and it just won't work in my Colorado winter. But I don't know. If you know the answer to that question, then by all means, throw it out there. And we'll try to get an answer to the question. Serena saying Enoch at Urban Gardener interviewed someone from Baker Creek Saturday. If you want to check it out, I'm sure Jay will provide the link if she wants to. Great. Thank you for that information. Enoch has just got so many wonderful guests. And if you don't know, I missed the last 2 months But for almost all of this year, and we're going to be starting up again here a couple weeks, I think, in December, is I am a regular guest on the Urban Gardener channel, the second Sunday of the month. It's me and Enoch talking about things in the garden. So check out the Urban Gardener channel. Check out some of those wonderful interviews, because it is filled with dozens and dozens of the YouTube stars that you love to watch the videos of, and Enoch has got them on his channel. So, but I'll be joining him again here in just a couple weeks, and moving forward into next year, I hope that we'll continue doing that as well. That I'll be a regular guest on his show. So he usually has a Saturday interview and a Sunday interview. So lots of opportunity at the Urban Gardener channel to get some of the information that you're looking for. Bohemian Herbology Natural Solutions Botanical Interest Catalog on the way. Awesome. So as we're talking about this, as some of these ideas come out, just go ahead and go online right now and order your catalog. I've already, I think which one was it? I got the email for today. I forget off the top of my head. It'll come to me in a minute. But as I've mentioned in recent weeks, if you get on their mailing list, and that's part of the catalog process, usually when you order your catalog, you'll be given that option. Do you want to receive additional emailings? Yes or no? And if you click yes, then you'll start getting some emails. And often those emails include the codes to save money on your orders. Those are awesome. A lot of times the emails include some educational information on what you should be considering in growing this or that at different times of year. So I don't mind getting those additional emails when it's gardening related, and when it's a seed catalog from a company that I like. Your option, of course, but do consider it. Get the free catalog, and then also consider signing up so you can get some of their additional emails. You can always unsubscribe, but there's a lot of good information that comes from these seed catalogs that goes beyond just what's in the catalog. So keep that in mind as you move forward and start selecting who it is you're going to buy from. Now, I do want to mention, because this is a part of our selection when you are looking at the seeds, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. So if you want an organic garden and you want to start with seed that is certified organic seed, then by all means, look for a seed company that sells the certified organic seed. And then also look to maybe saving that seed into the future, so you don't have to buy it every single year, because the certified organic seed tends to be a little more expensive than just the basic seed. But as you start thinking about those ideas, to save the seed and have the same variety year after year, you need an open pollinated seed. An heirloom seed is a little bit different, but it's also a little bit the same. So heirloom seeds generally have been around for a number of years, a number of generations. They have many stories attached to them that go back, in some cases, a few hundred years. Heirloom seeds are open pollinated. So you can expect that anytime you buy one of those heirloom seeds, that you can grow the plant and save the seed and continue to get the same plant year after year. The good catalogs, the good seed companies, will identify the open pollinated plants. It might not be an heirloom, but OP is in a lot of catalogs, OP for open pollinated. And so you can see right in the description of the seed that it is one of those kind of plants that you can grow and save the seed and never have to buy those seeds again. Sure, I'd love to support every seed company and buy from them every single year, but I also like to keep my budget going so that I can keep buying those new seeds I didn't know I needed by growing others year after year. So open pollinated is very important to look for if that's something you want to do. If the certified organic doesn't matter, then just go ahead and order the seeds that match what you want to do in your garden. Don't worry about GMO seeds. There are many, many of the companies that advertise they only sell non-GMO seeds because there's a fear among many gardeners about GMOs in the garden. You don't need to worry about it. With the exception of the purple tomato that came out of New Jersey this last year, none of the home garden seeds are going to be GMO seeds. GMO seeds are sold in bulk for industrial agriculture and big farms. They're not sold or packaged or developed for the home gardener, with that single exception right now. And there might be some other exceptions that develop, but for right now, don't fall into the hype that one company is non-GMO, because if another company doesn't say that, they don't need to say it, because none of the home garden seeds are GMO. So just take that off the table completely. Hybrids are another one of those things that can confuse new gardeners in particular. There's nothing wrong with hybrid seeds. Hybrid is just a developed plant from two different parents. It's not the same lineage. And so buy some, try them out. Sun Gold tomatoes are incredible. It's a hybrid plant. You can save the seeds, but you won't be able to grow Sun Gold again. If you want to grow Sun Gold, you have to buy a Sun Gold seed packet because it's a hybrid plant. And a lot of our favorite varieties in the garden tend to be hybrids. If you're one of those that wants to stay away from hybrids, fine. You don't have to. But if you want to experiment and try some new things, don't discount the hybrid seeds just because they're hybrids. It's not a GMO plant. It's just a cross between two different plants to arrive at something that might be disease resistant. It might be pest resistant. It might be a different color. It might be a different taste. There's a lot of reasons that these hybrid plants are developed. So consider them when you are selecting the plants for your garden next year, and have a combination. Every year, my garden consists of some hybrids, some heirlooms, a lot of open pollinated, and that's just part of gardening. Is you can mix and match and make it whatever you want for your particular garden. So kind of keep that in mind as you're moving forward with selecting the seeds that you're going to grow going into the future. And so I see some information going back and forth about some of the options for getting good prices. And I've mentioned M.I. Gardner before. M.I. Gardner has got some great prices. He has had to raise prices in the last couple of years, but that's one of those sources of good seeds. And the seed packets are also pretty good. They've got some good information on it. The prices very, very affordable. And so, like with some of those other seed catalogs, M.I. Gardner currently doesn't have a catalog because they don't have a huge selection of plants. But the plants that they have, some pretty good quantity for some pretty good prices. And that's the kind of company, if those are some of your considerations, to start thinking about as you choose the companies that you want to go with. I like the smaller family farms that are producing seeds. I like supporting the smaller companies. I don't necessarily like giving my money to the big corporation. And you can see those. One of the first videos I did on this channel many, many years ago, I was still at the Galileo School, and I talk about seed catalogs. And I think the video is The Truth of Seed Catalogs. something along those lines. I'm sure Jay is looking for it right now. It kind of exposes in that video, and I haven't talked much about it since, but because I get so many seed catalogs, and I have for so many years, I began to notice that some of the seed catalogs had the same address, completely different names, completely different catalogs. But if you ordered those seeds, you ordered them from the same company at the same address. And as I looked more into it, I found out that they were kind of marketing themselves as a smaller seed company in each of these different catalogs. But put together, it was a huge corporation selling cheap seeds out of basically big warehouses in the same address. And so you do need to be aware of the sourcing of the seeds that you're getting. And I don't like ordering from a company that is going to misrepresent themselves in an effort to get me to buy their seeds. So I I I don't buy from those seed companies anymore. And you can look at that video from all those years ago when I was much younger, and I highlight some of that. The story behind the seeds and the story behind the company, for me, is a factor when I select the seeds. And so as I put together my plan and as I select what I want to grow in the garden, and then as I refine that to choose a specific variety, and then I refine that further to determine who I'm going to get that variety from, I compare the companies, I compare the catalogs, I compare the stories. And if I can support the small mom and pop family run business over a bigger company, then I'll choose to do that. That's me. That's an option. If those kind of things are important to you, then add that to your seed selection process and help out those small companies if you can. So it's something to consider. Shandy's Garden says, in my gardeners got 760 varieties. Wow. I didn't know they had that many. They had half that much just a few years ago. So their 2025 digital catalog is now available, 164 pages. Thank you for that information. I haven't checked that out. I'll have to go online and see what they have. That's fantastic. He's got some videos from a few years ago where he was just starting the seed operation, and it was just a few shelves of seeds. And then he's got some newer videos since as they started expanding. So that's fantastic. I think that's incredible that you can have a gardener that started on YouTube like that and then has expanded. And Kevin at Epic Gardening is another great example of someone who started at YouTube and has built it into what is now a big company, or actually a group of companies that Epic Gardening includes. But that's fantastic. And that's another one of those things. If you like the idea of supporting a YouTuber who sells seeds, then you can consider that. And there's a lot of other YouTubers out there that have much smaller operations, just selling some of their own seeds. If you can find one of those that you like and that you can support, I completely support that option. And that way, but at some point, maybe they get too big and you need to switch your allegiance to a smaller company. If that's important for you, by all means, continue doing that. And I support some big companies and I support a lot of little companies. Ultimately, it comes down to what's going in my garden. And I want to get the seed that's appropriate, and I want to plant it. And sometimes, Baker Creek is a big company with most of their seeds sourced from elsewhere. Baker Creek no longer grows all of their own seeds, but sometimes they're the only ones selling a particular variety. Their website is rareseeds.com. And the reason it's called rareseeds.com is that's exactly what it is they sell in many cases. They're selling seeds that are sourced from all over the world, and you might not be able to find them anyplace else. than Baker Creek. So that's part of the selection as well. If the variety, if the plant is more important to you than the company you're buying it from, you may only have that one company to buy from. Some of the herbal plants. So, for instance, comfrey, the Russian comfrey, the Bach 14 is a great plant. I love it. You should grow it in your garden. But it's very difficult to find the seeds for that. And there's only here in the States, one or two reliable companies that will have the comfrey seed. That's okay. If that's something you want to grow, then you've got to grow it from one of those couple seed companies. Nothing wrong with that. Take advantage of the opportunity to get the seed you're looking for and then move forward from there. And the nice thing about the comfrey in particular is it's so easy to propagate. So it's another good example of you only really need to buy the seeds once, grow some plants, and then you can propagate it yourself beyond that first year of buying the seeds. So I like being able to propagate my own plants and saving money into the future. It's up to you to determine whether you want to keep buying seeds every year or maybe start doing some of your own. Arizona Highland Homestead says, what's the most expensive or rarest seed you've purchased? So it might be some of those super hot peppers. So a couple of years ago, I made a video about the super hot peppers that I was growing. Some of the varieties that are in the millions of Scoville heat units range and are quite rare. You're not going to find them in most seed catalogs. In fact, the company I bought them for no longer sells seeds, so they can be very limited in being able to find. But I forget which one it was, but I want to say it was somewhere around $10, and I think I got 5 seeds. So $2 per seed for some of those super hot peppers. That's probably the most expensive that I've bought. I have bought some tomato varieties, and this is one of those things that do look at the description of the seeds when you are getting them from an online source in particular. A few years back, I bought some tomato seeds, paid like $5 or $6 per packet, which is not unusual. But then when I opened up the packet, there were only like 10 or 15 tomato seeds in them, much fewer than I expected. And so to spend $6 for 15 tomato seeds, I wasn't expecting that. I was disappointed by that. But I did intentionally spend like $10 for 5 seeds. So those are some of the things that you have to be aware of. And if you're looking for some of those very specific herbal seeds that you might want to be growing, there's been some other plants like that I have spent dozens of dollars for just a few seeds, and it's not a regular occurrence. It's just experimental. That's when I'm willing to spend seed. I don't want to spend a lot of money on seed every single year, but I am willing to try something and experiment. And I did save some of the seeds of those super hot peppers so that I could grow them again. But that's one of those experiments that this year I grew Scotch bonnet peppers, which are very, very hot. I did keep that on my list. I grew the Hungarian peppers. The black Hungarian is much closer to a jalapeno pepper in the size and the shape and the heat. So I always grow hot peppers, but I'm not always willing to pay $2 per seed to grow hot peppers. So that's a good question. You need to ask yourself, how much are you willing to spend on your seeds? And so as you select your seeds, cost could be an important factor. I talked a couple weeks ago about the dollar stores and how you can get seeds at the dollar stores. Most of the time, they're quite reliable. Occasionally, I think the seeds get mixed up with the packet, and they're not always perfect, but they're for the most part good seeds, and you'll get good germination, and you can save a lot of money. And often, it's a lot of seeds, a good quantity within those cheap seed packets. If you're on a budget, add that to your consideration as you're selecting the seeds. How much is it going to cost? And definitely consider that going into future years. Is it something you're going to need to pay every single year? In that case, look at it as an investment. If it's some of those hybrids that you can't really grow again, then just put that in your budget every year or every other year, depending on how many seeds you're getting in a packet. You might need to continue to purchase those because you're not going to save. If you want to save, build that into your long-term planning as well. Christine Peters says, do you grow comfrey that reseeds itself or the hybrid? I think it's called Bocking. It's Bocking 14. That's what I was referring to just a few minutes ago, is that if you want to grow comfrey that doesn't propagate through the seed, it's the Bocking 14. If you don't care, you can find seeds a little more often of the generic comfrey. And that's what I have. I have a generic comfrey that will reseed. Now, in my area, it doesn't reseed easily. And so I haven't had that problem. When I was growing it in the greenhouse at Galileo School, it would reseed. The seeds would drop and they would sprout up again. And so if you want more plants, go ahead and choose one of those reseeding varieties if you don't mind it spreading to other areas, if you live in a region where it spreads easily. The few times that I've had one of the seeds attempt to sprout in my landscape, they're easy to pull up when they're very small. And so I think it's relatively easy to keep under control. But that's because, at least in my region, it doesn't reseed very easily. But there are lots of other regions where it could become a weed, and that's why you might want to go to that specific variety that doesn't reseed. And then the root cuttings are a great way to propagate comfrey. So if you're growing it and the seeds aren't going to be a method of propagation, you can always take a root cutting and take advantage of that. So Robin Garden says the Socrates cucumber F1. F1 means it's a hybrid. Were $10 for 10 seeds, a bit dear. However, it paid off in buckets of cukes, a very prolific producer. There you go. And so, yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. If you're growing particularly for fruit or for food production, or in the case of cucumbers, I love making my pickles and having pickles on the shelf all year round. If that's important to you and you find something like the Socrates cucumber, which is a hybrid, you're going to need to buy those every year, every other year, depending on how many plants you're growing. And so in a case of 10 seeds, I probably had at least 20 plants this year. And so of 3 different varieties of cucumbers. And so if you're growing 10 cucumber plants at $1 per plant each year, then you might want to add that into your budget. And so the reason I like to talk so much about seeds is, so let's use this as an example. The 10 seeds for $10, $1 per seed, which now means when you put the seed in the ground and it starts growing, you paid $1 for that plant. How many of you are not doing seeds? You're going to the garden center or a nursery and you're buying a cucumber plant and putting that in your garden. You're probably spending at least $3, $4, $5, depending on where you're buying that cucumber plant from. So when we talk about $1 per seed being expensive, and it is, the same plant that you buy already growing is going to be 3 to 5 times that cost. So it's all relative. The best thing about seeds is saving money and not having to go grow somebody else's plant that you're paying a premium for. you can save huge amounts of money by growing from the seed that you got for free or that you've saved yourself, because you're not paying anything for it at that point. But even if it does come down to $1 per seed, you can still be saving substantial money versus buying the plant. So when we make the decision to grow seeds, consider that as well. I grow my tomatoes and my peppers and my eggplants from seed every year because I can buy a packet of tomatoes, maybe 50 seeds for $3. I'll have those seeds for years and be able to grow those tomato seeds year after year at a fraction of the cost of buying a single tomato plant from a nursery and putting that into my garden. So if you're not growing from seed, maybe you should consider that as an option for next season. The seeds of the plants that you would normally buy as a plant and start them yourselves. If you don't have the lights and don't have the potting mix, add it to your Christmas wish list so you can get a seed operation up and going into next year's season. And I've got a bunch of videos on starting seeds and lights and all that kind of stuff. It's not that difficult, and you can do it relatively inexpensively. But I think it is one of those things that if you're not doing, you might want to consider doing, because it gives you so many more options. Those varieties, when you start looking at the varieties that you hear are great and you want to try them, get them online, start them indoors, grow them in your garden. Or I do a lot of direct sowing outdoors. The melons, the squashes, the cucumbers, all of those that I grew this year, I direct sowed those seeds outdoors. I didn't start them inside. So you can take that approach from the direct sown seeds or the ones that you start ahead of time. And it's, at least in my case, something I really like doing, not only for the money savings, but because I can choose some of those unique varieties and have fun with it along the way. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the background today. This comes from Diana Lynch. This is Diana's garden space. And some fun things to point out. I'm sure some of you have been looking at the background and noticing the beautiful space that Diana has. And so it's something a little bit different. So I talk about mulch a lot. I think mulch is important, mulch in our garden beds, but also the mulch outside our garden beds to keep the weeds from sprouting, to also just kind of keep everything clean and orderly. And so putting like one of these heavy duty landscape fabrics down, weed fabrics, can be an effective method within your garden. It's a mulch. It's something you're placing on top of the soil with the intent of weed control. And in this case, think about how clean the garden is. You don't have mud splashing all over. You can walk out to the garden barefoot and not have to worry about stepping on things. So this is clearly an option to use as a foundation for your garden. And then all the different sizes and shapes of the metal beds, another great example of how you can organize your garden space to grow all the different things. And if you look back in the background here, this is an option that I've done a few times. So that's actually a green stock vertical tower system, but it's not in a tower. Each of those tiers have been separated and are growing as individual potting containers. Think about that as an option. I was thinking about doing a video about that a couple years ago, of how you don't have to keep your green stock as a tower. You can just use it as individual pots and have them laid out across your garden. So good example of that. But these, you can see the leaves have fallen from the trees. This is a good autumn picture. But what's growing in most of these beds is all intended to improve the soil. So I've talked about green manure, about cover crops, and that's exactly what's happening here. Diana had noted as or when she sent me this picture of all the different cover crops that were being planted in these beds over the course of the winter to be used for soil enrichment. And so this is fantastic, a fantastic representation that at the end of the normal garden season, when you're taking out your tomatoes and your cucumbers and your squashes because the nights are getting colder and the leaves are falling from the trees, you can still have green in your garden if you're growing some of the winter wheat and the Austrian peas and some of those plants that can handle cold conditions and also are being grown as cover crops or green manure to enrich your soil. They can handle some extreme temperatures if you're choosing the right kind of plants to put into your garden beds going into winter. So always a great option for those type of things in your garden beds. It doesn't have to end just because you pull out your tomato plants. You can continue growing if you make the right selection for the plants. And then, of course, I always like to point out the chairs in the garden, having that sitting space to be able to go out and just soak up all of your garden energy. And Diana's doing that as well. So up front, there's a grow bag, and I think I had seen a couple grow bags in the background as well. And so you've got the metal beds with grow bags around them. You've got the green stock with individual tiers. You've got different size and shape beds. Just so nice to see what Diana's doing. So make note of what you like about Diana's garden and maybe add some things to your garden. I will mention, I talked about it last week, and I just got an email from Epic Gardening. They're having some great Black Friday sales coming up, and the Birdie's beds, the metal beds, just like these that Diana has are going to be on sale this month as part of the Epic Gardening Black Friday sales. So click on the link that I've got in the description below, because if you use the Gardner Scott code, you can get an additional discount on those metal beds. And the metal beds can be expensive. So if you're looking at metal beds, especially if you want a garden like Diana is with nothing but garden beds for the most, or the metal beds for the most part, take advantage of a sale Black Friday with a discount code, and you can save a bunch of money. I now have, let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 of the metal bed kits, or the metal beds that I built from kits. And I'd like to have more, but they can get a little pricey. Now it's a good time of year to buy them, especially if you link through the code to take advantage of it. So ask for a present going into the holidays to receive one of those as well. That's always a good option, so you don't have to take it out of your own budget. Llama is asking, I'm expecting over 7 inches of rain over 5 days, then switch to snow. Should I tarp the garlic beds so they don't rot? That's a consideration. Yeah, absolutely. The garlic crop I had 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I think that was a big problem. I had a terrible harvest year, one of the worst that I'd ever had. And I think one of the reasons for that was a late season rainy weather pattern. That was kind of what I was able to ascertain, because I hadn't paid much attention to it before. While those garlic cloves are in the ground, just starting to set up the root system, the soil is still warm enough. And if you get excessive rain, there is the possibility for the cloves to rot in the ground if they get oversaturated. So yeah, I would consider doing that. 7 inches of rain is a lot of rain. And depending on your soil in your garden beds, it could saturate the soil and could cause some damage to those cloves. So if you've got tarps to cover the garlic beds, it's not going to hurt anything to cover those. Garlic, even if the soil dries out a bit, the garlic's going to be okay. Garlic is so durable; it can handle dry conditions. It doesn't do well in excessively wet conditions. So maybe not a bad idea. And if it all works out, you won't even think about it again because it all worked out. If next year you don't have any garlic and you didn't cover the beds, that's kind of what happened to me, and that's a good indicator that maybe you should have covered. So go ahead and cover the beds. If you can do that, I think that could be a big help. Outlier Gardener, thank you for that super sticker. I appreciate the support. Thank you for being here, and thank you for helping out the channel. Thank you so much. That's always nice to see that support. Rick is saying sugar mama or daddy to buy garden beds. Yeah, I wish I had a sugar mommy or sugar daddy to buy my garden beds, but I also enjoy doing it all myself and being able to say this was my garden. Now, don't get me wrong, I've received a lot of free stuff over the years, and I do like getting the free things as gifts. But like my greenhouse, for instance, that's one of the things that's so special about my greenhouse is I budgeted for it over 20 years and I was able to buy it and I put it in, didn't get it for free. No one gave it to me. And I can look at that greenhouse and say, I bought it and I built it, and it makes it a little bit extra special. If you got someone that's going to buy you a greenhouse, take it. Yeah, it feels good to say you did it yourself, but sometimes some of those big purchase items really are great to receive as a gift. Keep your fingers crossed that maybe that would happen and you could actually take advantage of something along those lines. Shandy's Garden says, I want metal beds. Jeremiah and Jessica from Roots and Refuge Farm built. He's taken the metal roof material and lines a wooden frame around them, makes them very long, and you can sit on the wooden caps. That's what I've got. My big garden area, I've got a video that shows how I did that. And I agree. Those are great beds. I did the same thing, used the galvanized roofing sheets and built the wooden frame. And so you can see that in a number of my videos. That's where I grow my tomatoes primarily, and some squashes and some peppers. And it's relatively easy to do. So yeah, there's a number of us that have those kind of beds, and I'm sure that Jay will find some of those videos that that show the metal beds that I've got. But yeah, do that. It's so I think in the video, the one video that I'm thinking about where I talk about those metal beds, I break down the cost, and generally, at least here in the States, the cost to build the frame and then put up that corrugated metal around it is cheaper than if you were to build the same size bed from the wooden planks, the 2x8s or 2x10s. It can be cheaper to do the metal. And so my beds are 26 inches high because the metal, those roofing panels are 32 inches wide. I think it is 32. So those panels are 32 inches wide. And as I show in that video, I have them buried 6 inches deep to stabilize them and to make them sturdy enough that I can sit on top of. And so the beds themselves are 26 inches high, perfect for sitting on. To build a 26-inch high solid wood bed is much more expensive. So yeah, consider making some of your own metal beds, and it really can work out well. Yeah, there's Jay. Thank you, Jay. There's my video on how to build steel raised garden beds, and it's easy. It really is. Wear gloves. I talk about that in the video, of course, because those edges can get sharp, but it's a doable kind of thing. And it's so I like building in my garden because I always discover new things. So one of the things I discovered when I was building those beds, and I show it in that video, is a new tool. I love tools. And so it's an attachment that fits onto my portable drill. I think it's actually, I use it on my impact drill, but it's metal shears, and you hook it up to your cordless drill, and it cuts right through that metal. It's like it cuts it like butter. You have to have metal shears to cut that metal if you're going to size it. But those electric shears, that attachment that I stuck on to my drill, one of the most amazing tools I own. I haven't used it enough because I don't cut metal enough. But when I had to cut metal, oh, it was a fantastic tool. I love it. I didn't even know it existed until I decided that I wanted to make metal beds, and I started looking at getting some new metal shears. I've got some old ones that are like scissors, and it hurts your hand to cut through a lot of metal over time. So I started looking at shears, came across that attachment. It was one of those eureka moments in my gardening journey that was just fantastic, to be able to find a tool that worked so well to build the garden beds. So lots and lots of fun when you look at those kind of things. Serena's asking, what are tips for starting rosemary seeds? I always end up buying plant seeds that are difficult to germinate. So this is one of those. This is why I talk about getting different catalogs, because some of those catalogs that sell rosemary and all kinds of other seeds in particular will tell you the secrets to getting some of these seeds to germinate. And so I'll try to remember the name. I talk about it in some of my, in that video about my favorite catalogs. I talk about the one company that sells the herbs, and they break down within the catalog what you need to do to get the seeds to germinate. Because one of the things that we often are not aware of is that our seeds will need cold stratification. Prairie Farms, what's their name? There's more to it. Something Prairie Farms. They have in their catalog have a dozen different techniques of cold stratifying the seeds to help improve germination. And I think rosemary seeds fall into that category, where you should put them into your refrigerator for 4 to 6 weeks to cold stratify, and that kind of wakes up the seed. And then you germinate them into your seed starting mix and then your potting mix. The thing about rosemary seeds is they are difficult to germinate, and they take a long time to grow. So I grew my rosemary from seed a few years ago, and I want to say that I started them in January, and when I was putting them in my garden in June, they were still very small plants. So if you want to grow something like rosemary, lavender is the same way. Consider cold stratifying for about a month and then starting them as soon as you can, because they take a long time to grow to put in the garden as a full-size plant. Prairie Moon Garden, or Prairie Moon, is it Prairie Moon Gardens or Prairie Moon Nursery? But their catalog is great at breaking down some of these different plants and describing the different methods to cold stratify the seeds, because there are some seeds that if you didn't know any different would never germinate. and they describe that in the Prairie Moon Nursery catalog, that some of these seeds need the cold stratification, then they need exposure to warmth, then they need exposure to the cold again. And so the idea is that we're mimicking the weather conditions that those seeds are going to be exposed to if they fall off a flower outdoors. And so some of the methods to prepare the seeds for germination can take months, with varying patterns of cold and warm and cold. And so you got to know that when you're going to be growing your own seed, or you're not going to get the germination. And so just be aware that not all the seeds are the same, and that could play a role in your seed selection. If you find out that the seeds need exposure to cold and it's too late for you to do that before they go in your garden, then don't get the seeds this year. You can maybe buy them and plant them next year, or just wait till next year. But do consider those kind of factors when you're selecting your seeds. Does the seed need anything special? I've got a video on the stratification and the scarification. The scarification is damaging the seed, like rubbing it with a nail file or clipping it, basically cutting a hole in it so that the seed can germinate and then start growing. Because there's a lot of seeds out there that are so tough, so hard skinned, that if you just try to grow them without the scarification, they're not going to germinate. So knowing the difference between the types of seeds and what you need to do to them can be a factor. And definitely consider those kind of things. Dusty Flat says, I used the auger tool for bulbs. Really does the job. Yeah, another great tool. And there are, if you go to bulb catalogs, they often sell those augers for auger attachments specifically for growing bulbs, with the auger being a very specific size and maybe having a measurement on it so you can get the proper depth. And then, of course, you can get other tools for mixing paint and things like that that can also be used as an auger for digging a hole in nice soft soil. But yeah, great tools. I love those kinds of tools that you can use over and over again in your garden. Dan says, I love the building part of gardening, but I think I'm good for next year. Nothing new to build. Good for you, Dan. I'm mostly done. I still have some more building to do. I didn't get everything built this year that I wanted to get built, but that's a big part of what I like about gardening as well, is the building. And that's why I keep adding beds and keep trying new things, because I really do enjoy that. There you go. Thank you, Jay. Prairie Moon Nursery. And there's the link to that. Really good catalog if you want to grow some of, they do native plants primarily, and native plants that are suitable for my area: Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Kansas in particular. But the information within that catalog for plants of similar types, to include some herbs, can be really good. And it's a free catalog. So check out Prairie Moon Nursery, and you might learn something. I think that's incredible. Shandy's Garden says, Stirrup that I first saw Charles Dowding use, and the Hori Hori knife. I love them, and they're great Christmas presents. Yes, in fact, I've got a video from a couple years ago on the best presents for a gardener, and both of those are in that video. I love my Stirrup and the Hori Hori knife. And so, especially this time of year, start looking at videos on Christmas gifts for gardeners, like the one that I made. Actually, I think I've got two of them, two videos. You might discover something that you like. In my weeding video, so I did a video a few years ago about weeding. I actually show how to use the Stirrup hoe and just how effective it is. In the Christmas video, or the Christmas gift video, I just talk about it. I don't know if I show how to use it, but in the weeding video, I actually show it. Fantastic tool, and one of my favorites as well. Every gardener should have that Stirrup hoe. If you've got weeds over a large area that you want to deal with, take care of it. And then the Hori Hori knife. I don't always go out to the garden with it on my hip. But if I'm planning on doing some weeding or bulb planting or cutting of roots, I'll strap on that Hori Hori knife, and it's a great present. Every gardener should have a Hori Hori knife, because it can do things that a lot of other tools can't do. Or you might need 5 different tools to do it. Hori Hori knife is just jam-packed with opportunities. Colorado Bird Nerd, good to see you on this Monday. Thank you for that. Another wonderful Monday of Garden Chat, where I've learned so much. Thank you, Gardener Scott and Global Gardeners. You are so welcome. And I so appreciate your support of this channel. So I'm glad that we can pack as much as we can into a Monday chat. There's a few other things on my list that I think I'm going to have to save for another chat on another day. But we have definitely covered an awful lot today. I hope that you've been able to maybe add some ideas to your future lists. I can see that Serena and Betty and Shandy's garden are also talking about the hose. Heidi says, I love my hori knife. So if you don't know what the hori knife is, you can check out my gift videos. You can do a search of the hori knife. It's a Japanese tool. That's where it comes from. The name hori is Japanese, but it has multiple purposes, and it really can be a lovable kind of tool for your garden. And it cuts, it hacks, it digs, it pokes. And the hori, and most horis do, but the hori that I have has measurements. So it's great for bulb planting because you can dig a hole and know exactly how deep the hole is to put your bulbs into. So yeah, just can't say enough about that. Thank you, Jay. Here's that video, gardening gifts for gardeners. And that was actually one of the live streams that I did. So I've got the live stream, and I've got some other videos where we have talked about all the different gift ideas. Rick says, like stirrup hoe, still looking in Australia for one similar to the Dutch hoe, but doesn't move. And so Haas's have stirrup hoe. And so, like I talked at the very beginning, as we talk about some of these different things, you might not be able to find the exact same thing we're talking about, but hopefully you can find something that is similar. The idea behind the stirrup hoe is that the base of it is shaped like a stirrup, like a saddle stirrup. So it tends to have a flat blade with like a U on top to hold it in place. That's the kind I have. And so that flat blade just glides across the ground and slices off all the weeds at the root level. They also have some that are circular. So instead of a flat or maybe slightly beveled base where that is the blade that cuts through, instead it's a round hoe, and the blade is round, and that gets a little more of a targeted application where you put that circular blade into the ground, and you can cut out the weeds around plants or in the rows in an open bed area. So a couple different options of different shapes, and when we talk about those kind of hoes, but slices through those small weeds and gets rid of them so easily. Patrick, thank you for that. You're always such a great supporter as well. Tomato seed from ground to table, priceless. Oh yes, absolutely. And especially if you can find the free seed, like we were talking about, if you can find someone to give you the seed, that is truly priceless on many different levels. Free seed, free tomato seed that you can grow yourself and then put in the ground and then harvest fantastic tomatoes and then save the seeds to give away and use again. Absolutely. So thank you for your support, Pat. It's always great to see you here. And there's that video that I was thinking about, the 10 great gardener gift ideas. So thank you for Jay. Thank you, Jay. I'm sure you had to search a little bit to find that one. You're always such a big help. And there's the second one. I thought I had 10 more great gardening gifts. So 20 ideas for your gardener for the holidays you can find in those 2 videos, in addition to the live stream that I did a while back. So that's always fantastic. So Brian's Garden saying, have a great week, everyone. Stay well. I will second that notion that everyone have a great week. I wanted to end today by just talking briefly, and because I just happened to notice that in the last couple of weeks, I've gone to a few different charity events, not related at all to gardening. It was just me getting out in my community and supporting some worthwhile causes. And I thought, I should probably talk about this. This time of year going into the holidays can be very difficult for many, many people. Those of us that are gardeners generally tend to be nice people, happy people. We've got our gardens, we've got our gardening support network, whatever that happens to be. We get together on Mondays. We have all of our friends in our conversation on the side here, and we're chatting. But there's a lot of people that don't have that. They are struggling during the holiday season. And what's nice is that there are many of these agencies that recognize that. And this is the time of year that they start having events for donations, for contributions, for volunteer opportunities. And if that's something that interests you, if you're interested in helping out others in need, then start looking around your community in ways that maybe you can help. And like me, if you attend some charity events and you pay a little bit extra money and the money goes to a good cause, I'm willing to do that. And if you can find that volunteer opportunity where instead of giving money, maybe you give your time, that can also be very helpful. So I just encourage you that if you're the kind of person that is looking to help or willing to help, this is a good time of year that it's really needed. And there aren't any particular causes that I'll mention for you, for me. I think it's just the general idea. If there's some way that you can kind of give back, then consider giving back. And it'll make you better, guarantee it. You'll feel good about doing it, and it'll help make the world a little bit better. And that's part of what gardeners do. I think we just all help make the world a little better. That's just one way to do it at this time of year. So think about that. Next week, I'm going to be back. Hopefully you'll be back too. We'll talk gardening. It'll be a little bit closer to the holidays here in the United States. It's Thanksgiving next week. So that's coming up. Maybe we can talk a little bit about Thanksgiving as part of the next week's show. I hope you have a fantastic week. If you've got rain coming, if you've got snow coming, if you've got cold coming, it's okay. You're going to get through it. Start some of your planning. Start thinking about what seeds you need, and you can be ready early for next year. See you next week. I'm Gardener Scott, of course, and do enjoy gardening.